Everyone, today we have a very special guest, Quincy Harris, formerly known to be on Fox 29 News. This man does it all. He's an actor, he's a TV personality, he's a radio host. He has a few of his own shows, and he's had his own shows in the past. You may know him as Qdeezy. Welcome, Quincy.
Welcome.
Hey, thank y'all. I appreciate it. Dean, Blake, thank y'all for having me, man. I'm excited to be on because I heard the episode and it was just like so many like false things y'all were saying. So I'm happy to be here.
Amen.
Speaking of episodes, we'll get to the episode topic today. Today, we're going to be discussing eras in the NBA. The three of us will give our opinion on what's the greatest era in the NBA. So we'll speak of eras like the about 15 to 20 years. So we'll go from like the 1980s to the 2000s, 2000, and then 2000 to 2010 was a certain era. Then you have like the 2010 era, and then to now, and then we have like the old school era. So those are the eras we'll probably be discussing, unless Quincy, of course, has something else, because he's coming with some stuff. So
Stuff before our time.
As a guest, we would like you to start, Quincy.
Yeah. I mean, okay, it's like a mixture, right? Because I although I think the NBA is great now, I think what Michael Jordan brought to the NBA was like, oh, this is a real thing that we can take global, right? We can take it global and we can make a lot of money off of this. Before, like, you got to remember when Michael Jordan came into the NBA, I don't know if you guys saw The Last Dance, but like Chicago Bulls were like struggling. Like the NBA was struggling. Like the NBA draft wasn't even televised, right? So it was a different kind of like league up until that point. If you watch the Lakers Showtime HBO series that's on, like the NBA was like, I'm not going to curse, but it was like a bleep show, right? It was like anything was going on. So I think right before Michael Jordan, I think that was like the purest of the NBA, in my opinion, right? Like you, so I can probably go like 86 to probably like 96. Like, so that's the Jordan era, right? Because you had the old school players like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, who were like in Isaiah Thomas, who were beating Michael Jordan. And they weren't just beating him, they were elbowing him, they were punching him. It was like, it was a different league, and they weren't making that kind of money.
Jordan rules.
Yeah, the Jordan rules. I think now, although the NBA is good, come on, y'all. Do y'all really watch regular season NBA games? Like, they're low. How are you low managing a 25-year-old? Like, oh, he can't play because it's too many games. Are you serious? Are you serious? So I think right before the NBA became big business and these big contracts, I think you saw players playing because of pride and ego and just like, we're a team. Now it's like, you got dudes playing for some. I'm gonna go over here, Kevin Durant. I'm gonna go over here. I'm playing for y'all for like 2 years. Like, I don't know how many teams Russell Westbrook has played for. I like Russell Westbrook.
And Q, I want to say something about that because I don't know if you know, but KD is Blake's guy. So Blake, you got to defend him here.
I like him. I think he's a great player. I'm just saying, like you can't compare this NBA to when Charles Barkley was playing, when Patrick Ewing was playing. Like, these dudes weren't making a lot of money. I think we look at these guys like, oh my gosh, they're so big. But you have right now, you have maybe, a sixth man or seventh man in the league making more than Charles Barkley ever made in his entire career. Yeah. Right? Like, you got to really fathom that, because the TV money is getting so big that, like, you got 4 years, 20 million. That's nothing now. All right, I'm sorry. I feel like I can talk, so I apologize. I'm talking too much, Blake. I apologize, Dean.
Don't worry about it.
It's all good, man. I think for me, I think every era has its different perks and pros and cons, right? So, of course, Blake and I, we're more familiar with like the 2003, 2004 up until this point, right? But I guess the argument I can make for our era, and I've heard this a lot, is the players are more athletic and more skilled at an all-time level overall around the league. Not just the superstars, not just the LeBrons or the Giannis's, but just from top to bottom. You have dudes that they have deeper bags, they're more skilled. And I think, I wouldn't say the game's more fundamental, but it's just like one-on-one, it's tougher to guard guys. And then you have the game evolving of centers, right? Like, the traditional center now is shooting 3-pointers, and you have stretch bigs, and you have the Jokic's who, like, you know, they're bringing that European style of play over, where it's like the game overseas is much different because these guys have deeper bags and they're more skilled and they know how to kind of like make their defender play on their heels a little bit more. Not to discredit the past, because we know, like we've seen The Last Dance, that physicality, and that's something that we might have missed in the MJ and Bron debate, is like that man went to war every night and he still performed and he still put up numbers. So it's like mentally he had to be there, and skill wise he had to get his shots while playing through elbows and not getting flagrants and technicals on the other team. So
yeah.
Blake, what are your thoughts, man?
I was gonna originally go with sort of our era just because of the ability of players to sort of market themselves. And it's like what makes our era so great is, let's be honest, most people are fascinated by the Kyrie Irvings of the world that can do cool moves and can dance with the ball and make crazy shots. And with this era, with this sort of pace and space and the defense at 3 seconds and not being able to sort of crowd the paint, the falling of the big man, other than like the Embiids, the Jokic's of the world, it's like you can market players better and you can see them at their fullest potential because there's so much skill in the league. That's why I think there's like 8 players averaging 30 points in the league right now, which is almost unheard of because of just the pace and space and all the skill and the ability. And like Quincy said earlier, some people, like the lack of like sometimes effort in regular season games also plays into effect. So a superstar isn't getting dogged defense on them in the regular season like there might have been in the Jordan era, where every game seemed like it mattered. It was almost like I play college basketball and like every game matters, regardless of if you're playing the best team in the league or the worst team in the league. Since there's only 30 games, every game matters. And that seemed more like Jordan's era, where every game was rough house, hard nose. Well, now you sort of see like skill take over, and you can see the better teams coast through the regular season. And that's my biggest critique. But in terms of the era, I like the 2000s era because of like the different types of teams. I feel like now everyone's trying to replicate sort of the Warriors shooting, chucking a whole bunch of threes, having to stretch big. And every team that's trying to win is it's sort of like a similar style team of like, you have this superstar guard that pushes the pace. You build shooters around your superstars, and you sort of have a driving kick, isolation sort of offense. I felt like in the 2000s, there was a lot of different style team. You had the Shaq and Kobe Lakers who could play inside out and then have Kobe as like the primary ball handler, like making decisions. You had the 7 or second less Suns who could push the pace, run the play, had perimeter game, but also had Amari Stoudemire in the paint. I felt like then you had the Celtics who had KG, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, who could like have great half court sets, but then also with Rondo could push the pace when need be. It's like I felt like the styles of the teams were different, and it made things refreshing. Because now I feel like you sort of watch the same thing hypothetically, other than like certain teams who play like the Sixers and the Nuggets, who probably play through the big man a little more than most other teams. A lot of the time you're watching the Dallas Mavericks, you're watching pick and rolls the whole game. You watch even the 76ers at times. You watch James Harden at the top of the key, dribble, pick and roll, and then try to do something. I felt like the 2000 era, although it wasn't as physical as Jordan era, it had the physicality because you had the Shaqs of the world in there, but then you also had the skill of the Kobe's, the AIs, the T-Macs. And so I feel like there was like a good balance of rough, hard basketball, but then also that sort of skill pace of the basketball, and not every team had to be the same. So I sort of like the 2000s era.
Quincy, I want to hop in. You were shaking your head when he said James Harden. What was that about?
I think that although I like James Harden as a player, I think his best days are behind him. I don't think we'll make it to the NBA Finals with him. I think I just don't like the play. I don't like let's dribble 25 times and try to get a foul. I don't like it. I want to go back to both of y'all points, right? All right, so Blake, you said, about the mid 2000s, about like the different teams, right? And I grew up in that era, right? Like I was like in my 20s, right? So I had a friend who was an NBA player, and this was when shoe companies were giving out big contracts, and he could have been a really huge player. He was a good player. He made a lot of money. But what happened in that era was everyone was looking for the next Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Right? So if you didn't get your money in the early 2000s from your team, you got it from the sneaker companies.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they were all like, okay, look, here, like I'm gonna get, like you had cats making $100 million on sneaker contracts. Right. Yeah, cats. So it was like the game started to change. And I'm sorry, Allen Iverson with his just like, I'm out in the club. I'm just out here. That changed the culture of the game. I'm not saying for bad or for worse or good, but I'm just saying like it changed it. Yeah. So, just before that, it was like, yo, you had to come out every night. Right. And really ball. And listen, I'm happy for the players that got paid. I'm happy for, the players now. Like you're gonna see players making even way more money. Right. But I just think the pure essence of the game was like, oh, and this was before social media too. So we have kids now in high school, like Mikey Williams, we know him in high school. I feel like I've known, right? He's about to be 12th, he's about to graduate.
He's a senior this year. He's
a senior. We've heard about Mikey since he was in like 9th grade. He's the next one, right? So now Mikey comes into the league. Right. He was on Pivot podcast saying like, yo, I'm trying to be a billionaire by 25. So he knows he has pressure on the ball, but like not really, because he can kind of game. Like it's so many other things that are taking players from an individual standpoint out of what the game was. To your point, Dean, yes, the players have gotten way better. They're like, oh, okay, so Jordan doing this. Okay, we doing all right. So then you saw Kobe, and then you saw T-Mac jumping out the gym. Then you saw what's my man, Vince Carter. Like you saw all of these people like, all right, so that's what we got to do. So individually, the players are light years ahead. But guess what? With the players being light years ahead, the team sport of the game has kind of digressed. And it's all about individuals, because I gotta get mine. Oh, right. So now you got 100 million. I gotta go to another team. Oh, I gotta get on the championship. Let me just ride over here. So it's more of a business, and I'm happy that these dudes are getting paid. But the essence of the game has drastically changed. Like you could turn on early 2000s. You could go to a game. You see AI drop 60. You know what I'm saying? You see Kevin Garnett, getting 20 boards and 24 points. You see Tim Duncan, like these guys were balling, but it's just a little bit different now. Like dudes taking off. Like you can just imagine, y'all, this just happened, y'all. Just imagine you buy tickets, you get them on StubHub, you go to the Golden State Warriors game. Tickets cost about $250 a piece, right? You go. Yeah. And Steph Curry is he got street clothes on. I'm not saying he wasn't really hurt. I'm just saying like, they're like, So that's the thing for me, is just like, it made me lax. It made me feel like sport, like the only sport, well, I like all sports, but the only sport I have to watch every game is NFL.
I agree.
Because it's so intense, and it's like they can't do the things that the NBA or MLB do. They can't take off. Like it's really intense. Like you got to get it in those 17 games that you play. So,
and back to Blake's point, like he said about his college schedule and the 30 games they have, for the NFL, it's like every game matters. So it's like this is a must win, not only for the division, but for our playoff picture and things like that. But a question I have for the both of you, and there have been a lot of arguments, and I think you both, different eras will have different takes here. But do you believe that, like, not superstar, but star players in today's, or like, well, superstar and star players in today's league would be superstar and star players back like in the 80s and 90s? Amongst stars and all-time players like the Magics, the Larry Birds, the Jordans, and things like that.
Okay, Blake, I'll go, man. Totally. These players are so, like y'all said it, they're so advanced. Like, I mean, you think of I saw a clip of Colin Sexton when he was in high school.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, Colin Sexton today is like, he's a good player, he's cool. right? Garland, like his handle, his package, Garland from, you know what I'm saying? Like them dudes on, just let's just look at Cleveland. That Cleveland, that's a young, stacked, talented team. Mobley, like,
oh my God, I love Cleveland.
like they are stacked. You look at New Orleans, stacked. So could you imagine Zion jumping out, dunk? Charles Barkley ain't have nothing for him.
Yeah.
I'm saying like the players y'all have literally morphed. I don't know where it's going to go. Like I follow these Instagram pages like Ball is Life and all these other things. You see these kids at 8 years old doing things that I couldn't do at 15.
Right.
It is literally ridiculous what the player has morphed into. So in my opinion, yes, I think these players, Kevin Durant, 7 foot, taking cats from the 3-point line. Oh my gosh. It would be, to me, it's like hands down.
Yeah, I agree. I just think a lot of the arguments is like, would they, the physicality, blah, 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 could they do that? And I think it's just coming with natural adaptation. Like, think about it. Like, people are like, would Kevin Durant be physical enough to play? Like, well, yeah, maybe he doesn't play as strong now, but he doesn't have to play as strong now than he needs to. When you have people as talented that are in the league now, you think Jaylen Brown's considered like one in the mid-tier, like a star, almost superstar, but not yet. Imagine him imagine that same level caliber player in the 1980s. Who's like a comp to Jaylen Brown of what that is? I don't know. I can't even think of somebody, but imagine
that's James Worthy. He's like a James Worthy kind of player.
Imagine Jaylen Brown in that era. You have his athleticism, his skill. You're bringing the skill from the 2020s into the 1980s. Like, are you kidding me? With that skill, and then give them like a year or two to adjust to the rules. Like, all these players will adapt their games. Like, they're all too skilled and too talented not to be able to adapt their games to the era. I just think right now the criticism of the players now is just a product of the era and sort of like the flopping, foul baiting era where people would think like, oh, like they wouldn't be able to play in this era just because they can get away with it now. I don't think it's more so that. I just think they're taking advantage of what's given to them now, more so them not being able to adapt their games.
Now I gotta jump to the defense for my man's Bron. I know he's always a target of flop, La flop and all that. And he's gonna cry for his cause, crybaby Bron. But like Blake said, I think that he understands the politics of the league now and the rules and things like that. If I can use my influence, if I can use my influence and get to the free throw line and things like that, they know I'm a star player. They're gonna respect that because I've earned that respect. But if LeBron's coming into the league during the time of the Jordan rules and the bad boy Pistons, if he understands that, okay, here's how I have to play to make it in this league and be great and be like Mike, I'm going to adapt, like Blake said. So I think that's my defense for our era and our generation of, sure, the league may be softer, because I can admit it is a little soft. You see big dudes 6'10", and they're soft as tissue paper, and they don't like contact. They don't want to go into the paint. They want to sit out and shoot threes and rather do that at a low rate instead of going into the paint and like dominating like a Shaq did back in the day.
One question I think could affect this era question was, my mom asked me, like, we could do a topic on this, would be like, what is one rule change that could be made now that would drastically change the game or like make the game better? And one rule change that I possibly explored, I'm not sure if I'd fully want this, is getting rid of the defensive 3 seconds. I think that could possibly change how the game's played and how like people run their offenses. Because right now, like, I watched the video and the science on LeBron James elbow ISOs, and what he does is he literally jabs and he's counting in his head. He's like, okay, Rudy Gobert has been in the paint for 1, 2, and at 2.5 seconds he goes because he knows Rudy Gobert has to leave the paint. And then it's like, okay, who's stopping LeBron James one-on-one in the paint on an elbow ISO in the paint? And then you also just see like the falling out of like a post big. Like, the only post big in the league, like, that's doing it on a consistent basis every night is Joel Embiid. And even he at times settles for too many mid-range jump shots.
Yeah.
He doesn't get his back into the paint. And I think possibly having like defensive 3 seconds could change sort of the complexion of how offense runs, because then you could leave a Rudy Gobert out, and then you could have your different defensive schemes, so you don't leave the corner 3 open all the time and stuff like that. And it might help bring the big man back. So that's one possible idea, but what would you guys think as a rule that could change?
First, I would just say, like, you need if you take the defensive 3 second away, right, you're going to see scores like at halftime 45-40. You know what I'm saying? Like you're going to, like, it's going to be not fun to watch, right? And the NBA has morphed into, I mean, I think we all know this, like, nobody really watches TV like that. I only watch television to watch live sporting events, right? So if I'm gonna watch a Sixers game or watch a game on a Friday night or Christmas, right, or watch a game, like, I want to see something entertaining. Like, I know those holiday games are going to be something that people are going to watch. And if you at halftime only got 45-40, that's bad for business, right?
Bad marketing.
I think even just on the defensive side, I think they should bring back hand checking. Like, come on, let me touch you a little bit. Like, come on, like, you know what I'm saying? Jordan, you can touch him a little bit. Like, I just don't like how you can't even touch these guys. Like, you play basketball anywhere else. You're playing on the playground. Like, you touch, it's some physical contact. It's not football, but it's some physical contact. So I think hand checking should come back.
Yeah, speaking of that, dude, one of the most interesting things with hand checking was it was a series a couple years ago. It was the 21-21 playoffs, and it was the Bucks versus the Nets. And you saw like how PJ Tucker was guarding KD, and he was sort of like hand checking and getting into him. And then like it was sort of like inconsistent, because it was like game 4, they let him rough him up in Milwaukee. The series got 2-2. Game 5, they couldn't really touch him. He had a 50-point triple-double and stuff like that. So it was sort of fun to see how KD adjusted the series adjusted during the series based off the physicality, to your point. And we saw those games were sort of hard neck, rough rider. Like, you would think that series would be like 120-115, but those games were close, competitive, and very physical. So it's like, that hand checking was a big part of that series. So it was interesting to see that.
To circle this all back, right? To give my answer, because Quincy, you said like 86 to like 96. That was like the toughest and like almost best era of basketball all time. My answer, I think is just the 80s, the decade of 1980s, because not only did you have, like you said, the NBA on a worldwide stage and of notoriety and things like that with the Magic and Larry Bird saga and like, back and forth, but then you have the introduction of Michael Jordan, arguably the best player of all time, coming in, taking the league by storm at a young age in his early career. Then you have the emergence towards the end, the 88, 89, and 89, 90 of the bad boy Pistons. You really see the physicality pick up in the fights. And then you kind of get into like, the malice of at the palace and things like that. But I think that was kind of like the precursor to the physicality of the league. My question to you as a viewer, what do you think is more beneficial for the league? Would you prefer more calls and like protecting the players more, or would you prefer like a little bit more physicality closer to that of like the bad boys and the hand checking and things like that? Because it's pros and cons to both sides.
Yeah, I think it's like a little bit of both, right? Like, you can never go back to what they were doing. I mean, like, Bill Laimbeer and Rick Mahorn from the Pistons were elbowing, and they were nasty, right? So you can't go back to that, because that wasn't kind of fun to watch, especially if you were a Philadelphia 76er fan and they were beating us all the time going to the finals in those years. But I think I don't need to see all-star NBA all-star type scores every night, right? So just like take a little bit of that, and I want the players to make money, right?
Right.
But do your job. Like, you taking off 20 games. Like, I love Kawhi Leonard. I think he's one of the most amazing players when he's playing.
Right.
But like, dude, this load management stuff, like, you come to could you imagine living in a town like Minnesota, like, you know, Minneapolis, and you take your girl or you take your homies to go to a game, and the star from the other team's not playing. Like, when are you going? Where are you going to go catch that player play again?
People save up their money to go to those games.
That's where I'm at, because love, you know, we're on the East Coast. If you miss it in Philly, maybe they may play in New York. If you miss it in Philly or New York, you possibly can go to DC, right? So we have like a couple of different areas. If you want to go wild and drive up to Boston, maybe you can go up to Boston and catch these guys. But like, if you live in like I said, a town like Minneapolis, you're not San Antonio, you're not catching these guys. Right. So I just think it just needs to be a little bit better for the leagues. Even if, you know what, one rule I should say they should do? If it's me, I would do not 82 games. I would make it probably like a 70-game series, a 70-game regular season. They won't do it because of money, but like it would be a little bit more intense.
Right, because then each game matters a little bit more than that, and you kind of have like that load management piece. But
I
think we shared a lot this episode. We're going to do something a little bit new to kind of wrap it up. Since you're like our you're like our first big special guest, we want to know some constructive criticism you have for us with content, and also too, somebody you'd like to see us bring on to the show moving forward.
There's nothing constructive. Just keep going. Like, this isn't, you know, it's about consistency. Like when I felt like an old man. When I was your age, you have to, if you do media, you have to keep going. It's like being in the gym. So it's not even about, it's no critiques, y'all. Like I told y'all, I'm on here because I listened and I was like, but y'all did your job. That's what you stating your points. Both of y'all stating your points and having that conversation. You want the audience to go, man, you crazy. Because I was on Dean's Instagram like, dog, you crazy. Y'all did it. That's job well done, right? A person who I would like to see y'all get Stephen A. Smith.
Stephen A. We love Stephen. We always talk about Stephen A.
Yeah, Stephen A. Smith, man. Like I just say keep going, man. This is good stuff. I'm on here because I was a listener of one of the podcast episodes, and I was like screaming on y'all because I didn't agree with y'all, but that's what it's supposed to do.
Definitely. Well, Quincy, Qdeezy, we thank you for tapping in with us.
All love.
You know, it's been a great episode. I think, you know, we brought a different perspective on for the first time, and, you know, really got, I know, you know, some of the people that came before our times are like, all right, Q definitely stood up for us and let these young guys know some background information that they might not have known. So thank you for your time. It was really good talking to you, and we'll definitely take into account all your points that you shared with us today.
All love. And I'll take y'all points in too, man. I learned a lot. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you for tapping in, everybody.